One of the key ways of identifying if a person you're working with has a narcissistic personality structure is they refuse accountability and they're fragile when you speak into their life.
We just got back from the Global Leadership Summit. Getting to watch you speak was amazing. You had a little bit of technical difficulties. It's crazy to me that you were able to not ruin your talk. Your talk got better.
What really comes to my mind is good quarterbacks can throw great in perfect conditions. Great quarterbacks throw great in terrible conditions.
You're listening to the Mindshift podcast. My name is Erwin McManus. I'm here with my dad, Erwin McManus. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm a little slumped into my chair. This is episode number 2, but we're going to play it as episode number 1.
That's because
we just got back from the Global Leadership Summit in the suburbs of Chicago.
Barrington. And it was amazing. I mean, it's an incredible event. I think it might be the largest leadership event in the world.
It's massive.
Yeah.
There's 8,000 people live in the room.
Yep.
And then there's 85,000 people watching it live in many
satellites
different rooms.
Around the United States and other parts of the world. And then they have another 150,000 who experienced the conference in delayed broadcasts across the entire planet.
And I'm not great at math, but that adds up to about 7 million people. So this is the greatest.
Or 250,000.
The most amazing leadership business conference in the world.
It's great. It's a great intersection of business and faith. It's really just packed with leaders, pastors, business people, companies.
It's really amazing. It was really fun. And I really, this is going to be kind of our recap of our experience at Global Leadership Summit.
That sounds like fun.
GLS. So if you hear us say GLS, that is gangster for Global Leadership Summit. Mm-hmm. And we'll refer to that a lot. And we went to Chicago. We took a team of about 12 people, which is really exciting and fun to be a part of. But it's also the place where we released 1,000 copies specifically for
special edition.
Yeah, special edition, which is a paperback version, which is what we have right now, which is amazing. And the hardcover comes out on September 10th, The 7 Frequencies of Communication, The Hidden Language
of Human Connection.
Yes. Written by my dear friend and father, Erwin McManus. I'm very, very excited. We've worked really hard on this book for the last, what feels like forever. It's kind of been a 2.5 year process because we started with the 7 frequencies being a part of the art of communication, the world that we were building out with our masterclass world.
Here is the special edition 7 frequencies.
It's amazing.
And there's the back, which is so very, very cool.
So cool.
That could be the cover right there. It's just pretty epic.
I'm snacking now because Carlos dropped off snacks and a matcha.
That's how true friends are.
Huh.
They bring you snacks, they bring you drinks, they've dropped kombucha in your lap. It's like, pretty awesome.
Yeah, we sound like a bunch of kids from LA.
This might be the most informal podcast we've ever done.
Powerball
right
coconut.
Now. What is a Powerball?
I think it's just a bunch of healthy things inside of something that looks not so healthy.
That's what they tell you.
What?
Now if you just say it's healthy, then you eat it, right?
I also said give your life to Jesus and my life will be peaceful, but that ain't it. Well, the first part's great, but the second part's not so peaceful.
Well, I have a feeling you're supposed to contribute to the peace part.
Yeah? Why am I in Mexico City doing a recap?
All right, let's talk about the Global Leadership Summit and our time there. For me, it's a return engagement.
Yes.
And I think I first spoke there 20 years ago, maybe longer.
Okay.
And I got a call at 2 a.m. when I was in a hotel in Chicago, telling me the speaker that morning didn't show up. He was sick, and asked me if I could step in and speak. So my first moment speaking that event was a spontaneous message that morning. I went back to sleep. I remember asking Kim, did someone just call? And she goes, well, was there someone on the phone? And I said, yeah, they just asked you to speak. And I went back to sleep, got up, went to the gym and went there and gave my first message there. It was exciting. And I've been invited over the years, which I really appreciate. Mm-hmm. But this one was really special for a number of reasons. And so I want to hear who were some of the highlight speakers for you, some of the highlight moments.
Okay. Well,
or just your thoughts in general.
Yeah, my overall thoughts. Because I've been going to this conference. I was 12 years old. I think it was the first time I went. And I was shocked. I'd never been to Chicago. I'd never been to the suburbs. I had never seen a church have a lake before. And I thought this was the biggest building I've ever seen. I was blown away. And they've gone through a lot. I was there 5-6 years ago when they had a massive crisis, and they really had to fight through a lot of bad press and things that were happening, and to be here at this conference and work with their team for the last year and really get to know them more personally has been like a really big gift. I mean, shout out to Max and Kristen, and shout out to Joanne, our amazing production facilitator, and Craig Rochelle, and I don't know the CEO's name because he's newer, but there's such a shout out to our host Dave, who is looking after us. We had some amazing people in our world. So for me, I had a great experience. I really enjoyed it. I'm not a huge fan of any suburbs, but what I did love is just the good people, kind people, amazing people that we got to meet from all over the world, but from like locals from Barrington or from Wisconsin, like an hour away. It's just really cool to meet good people. And for me, I think now, the people make the place. Yeah. And so that conference was great because people made it great. I don't know if there's a place where there's more kindness in just every volunteer that's just there, every security guard. They're just real people. They're people who've grown up there, people who've been there, people who run businesses there and take a week off to just help be a part of this amazing moment. And it's really unique because it isn't necessarily, it's definitely faith influenced, but it's not necessarily faith based. There's obviously a lot of people who are speaking about God, but for the most part, it's Coach K from Duke. And wasn't quite sure how I felt about that. As we're a big North Carolina fan.
I know I'm a Tar Heel, but it's hard not to love Coach K.
No, he was phenomenal. I mean, he might have been one of my favorite speakers there. There was Arthur Brooks. We had, was it Molly Fletcher, who's also great. We had you. We had Craig Rochelle.
We had our friend
Will Gadara. Yeah. Which he's, so special and so unique. And so it was really fun. I have a weird story about.
There's another guy named Arthur Brooks too.
I did say that.
Oh, you mentioned? Okay.
That was my second name.
All right. Tell me your story.
No. Who are your favorites?
No, tell me. You said you had a story.
I do have a story.
I want to hear it.
Okay. So we check into this hotel. We landed a day before the conference started, and we ended up going into the printing house that printed this run of books, which is really unique. So shout out to our team over there. Amazing. And we went into that to go see like the way that they run the printing presses and all of the new digital equipment. So cool. It was so, and we've never done it. And like you've been publishing books for what, 30 years now, 25 years now?
It's my first time to ever go into the printing press process.
First time ever. And they were wonderful. And so it's been really cool because we started a publishing company called Arena Publishing. We're publishing all of our own books and our own content, which has been incredible to like have control over the full process, from how we market this book to the subtitles to the typeface and the cover and the colors, the design, to the way that we present this out to the world. And then to go in on Wednesday, and which was the day before, and which was really nice and amazing. And we're at this hotel, and I said to you, I was like, is it weirdly quiet at this hotel? And you were like, yeah, it's like weird. Like the conference is starting tomorrow. Like you'd think there'd be more buzzing around. And then we realized that there was a cheer convention happening. That the
conference attendees could not get into that hotel.
Yeah.
Because there was a cheer conference. So we're surrounded with 14, 15, 16-year-old cheerleaders everywhere.
I mean, like 1,000 of them. I'm not kidding. And this lobby is gigantic. Huge, and there's a convention center connected. It's gigantic. And there's just 12-year-olds running around everywhere in like their little cheer outfits. So I'm going to get a coffee before we're going to the first session on Thursday. And there's all these like kind of big like half semi walls, and there's like a little coffee shop in the back. And I'm not expecting great coffee. I just need, I just need the injection. And I turn around because I see the line is so crazy long, filled with like cheerleaders and cheer moms. And I run into Will Gadara, and he goes, "Hey, how are you? How's dad?" And I was like, we give each other a big hug, and he's there with his suitcase. He's just getting in. And I just said, "Are you looking for coffee?" He goes, "Yeah, did you decide to give up?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Is this a little weird?" And I was like, and I like leaned in and I said, "The 1,000 cheerleaders running around like the whole hotel?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I was like, "Yeah, I feel creepy, but just because like I'm a grown man in this like obvious like weird junior high."
But we were there first. They invaded our space.
And so we had like a little like funny like off the path moment, and we were both laughing, and he was talking about wanting to see you, and his parents were there, and his relationship with his dad is incredible. And so that was a really fun moment. But what were some moments that you enjoyed?
Well, just attaching to that, the morning after I spoke, Kim and I went to get coffee and some breakfast at the little spot in the hotel there, and Will's mom and dad were there.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
It was just so exciting to meet them and spend time with them. And they came and talked with us. And, his mom went and got the book so I could autograph it. And me and Will's dad got a photograph together and said, people don't give dads enough credit. No.
Yeah. It's his stepmom. It's his
stepmom. Yeah, I knew it was his stepmom.
Yeah, his dad's new wife. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so special, man. And okay, so can you talk to me a little bit about what it was like? This is a little also like reference. We did an episode with Will Guidara. Him and his wife are phenomenal. His wife owns Milk Bar. He owned 11 Madison Park, author of Unreasonable Hospitality. We have an episode that we did last year, so go scroll back and look for that. It's great. He's an amazing communicator. But what was it like for you as a speaker at the GLS? What was that like?
Sure. One, I was super nervous because I was presenting a concept that was so new, so different. And I felt like I had an incredible opportunity to catalyze momentum around the world. So the weight of it was pretty intense. But I went and listened to the different speakers, and I couldn't help but listen to them through their frequencies, right? Because I'm thinking about the 7 frequencies.
Yeah.
And so I heard Craig Rochelle open up, and I think I joked in my talk that Craig Rochelle's frequency is commander, with a secondary frequency of commander.
Yes.
And
I love Craig. We have to get him on this podcast.
Then after I spoke, he chest bumped me 4 times, in a complete,
we have footage of all of this.
Complete commander mode.
Yeah.
And then I cannot remember the name of the speaker right after him. Was it Mindy and
I'm not sure who was after him.
And she was a total motivator. That was her frequency.
Cool.
Completely high energy, high enthusiasm, trying to build people's self-belief. Then most of the speakers for me were in that professor frequency, the importance of transmitting information. In fact, I had a moment because I had a chance to do an interview with Arthur Brooks over a lunch. And I'm sure he did not hear my talk, but he's a pure professor frequency. In fact, it almost felt like a cliche because he's a professor at Harvard University.
Yes.
So in the middle of our Q&A together, we asked him something about feelings or emotions in people. He goes, feelings are nothing but data. And when he said that, I felt like he was just reading out of the chapter on professors, because in the professor frequency, they talk about that they're the ones who think life is all about data. And he literally, point blank, blatantly said, feelings are nothing but data.
It could not have worked out better.
I know. I was just it was like a moan in the room.
He teaches on happiness.
He does teach on happiness, which I'm sure is all data based.
Yes, and we the whole team was there, and I had a friend there, Kevin, and we had a bunch of friends there, and we were talking about each speaker, obviously after they spoke, and in good fun and just this healthy rhetoric. He goes, "What do you think of Arthur?" And my buddy Kevin was really excited because I think he had just read one of his books or just talking about him. And I was like, "Oh, I think he's incredibly interesting." But I don't like that he's quantifying happiness.
And even in my interaction with him, he acknowledged he really struggles with being happy.
Yeah,
happiness is very elusive to him.
In the interview, he talks about that.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the interesting things about all communicators. Communicators expose to you who they really are. They tell you what their inner narrative is. They tell you who their giant is, or what's the dragon, the demon they're trying to kill.
Right.
And so if you listen carefully, it shouldn't surprise you when someone's talk is on the science of happiness, and that's what he teaches at Harvard, that he struggles with being happy. He's fighting for his own happiness. And, I remember years ago, Kim asking me, could you stop talking about heroes and living a heroic life? And I said, no, I can't, because I live in fear that I will die a coward and never live a heroic life. And, and I think from my childhood, I just always wanted to find that heroic version of me. And so I try to call that out of everyone. Every communicator reveals to you their shadow and light. And so it's really fascinating listening to everyone. And then I think is it Molly Fletcher who became the person you talk to quite a bit.
Yeah, in the back. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, she's a boss.
She's great.
I think she's another
Killer.
commander.
Yeah, she was the sports agent of like Doc Rivers, Billy Donovan, all these amazing like coaches and players. Really, really unique businesswoman. Also just great personality and fun to talk to. And we chatted in the back, and someone had connected us, and we wanted to have her on the podcast. We were hoping to have her this week, but we ended up being in Mexico City. But we'll have her on soon. She's great. She got stories.
Yeah,
which was always like the best. But I was really fascinated. Arthur Brooks might have been my most controversial take. I absolutely loved Coach K's breakdown of teaming and values and standards versus team rules and kind of the stories he talked about. But I loved your talk, and so we're definitely not gonna skip over your talk and everything you went through, because you got asked to do this, and we really kind of crafted this topic and book. Not around GLS, well, really around GLS, because we had released 7 Frequencies, and we had just started engaging in conversation with them about what it would look like to talk this year at GLS. And you had brought up 7 Frequencies as being like a potential next book, and they were like, "Oh, we love that."
Yeah.
And so we're like, "Okay, cool. Why don't we launch the next book at GLS?" And so it was really special. Normally for we were learning all these things. We started a publishing company. Normally publishers create galleys to send to all the book conventions and to send for press and to send to all of the buyers. We skipped that because we're kind of refining. We're gonna brand and reestablish the new standard for publishing books and how to do that and how to work with authors and the creative experience. But it was really fun to not create galleys. We created 1,000 special edition copies. Normally a galley will have tons of errors, tons of typos, tons of misprints. Like it's the first run. It's cheap. It's printed really cheaply, and no knock. It's meant to be used as something that's behind the scenes and never sees.
It's really meant to be thrown away.
It usually has like a stamp on it that says this is not meant for sale.
Yeah, on the back is just the data information on the galley, not really anything related to the book.
Yeah, usually we'll have like contact information for publishers, all that stuff. We skipped that stage. We wanted this to be something that if you bought here and purchased at the conference, that you wanted to keep it.
Yeah.
And even more, we spent more money on the special edition.
I know.
Whereas we're not calling it a galley, we're calling it a special edition. We spent more on the special edition than we did on the first print of the books.
Yeah.
Ironically, to buy in bulk is cheaper than to make $1,000 or 1,000 copy run. Yeah. So for us, we're learning a lot of new things, but it was really cool. They had only bought maybe a few hundred copies and then immediately like tripled their order to like 500 or 600 copies, which was
and
really
they sold
cool.
out right away.
Sold out right away.
Yeah.
And then getting to like be in a book signing line with our own book was like a really proud moment.
Yeah.
And you have a really interesting, core value that if someone spends money on your book, you'll always sign it. And so that's been really fun and that was cool. But getting to watch you speak was amazing. And you were mid-morning on the first day, and
I was the last speaker on the first day.
Oh, okay. So you're 2 p.m.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. And it was amazing. You closed out the day. People loved it. You had a little bit of technical difficulties. Your intro, your first 3 minutes were going, and then your mic broke.
Yep.
And Joanne ran
down, was down on the floor beneath me, and she said, "Here," and I said, "I don't need it," and she says, "We need it."
It was really funny.
Yeah, and I was just saying, "Hey, if it seems like they can still hear me. I think we're good."
Yeah,
and she was like, "We're not going to get the recording,
which we needed.
We're not good."
Yeah,
and so then I just grabbed the handheld and went from there. And completely forgot that I had a head mic on.
Yeah, but it was 3 minutes and 52 seconds in. I know because I wrote it on my notes. 3:52, mic broke. And it was maybe 15 seconds between the first like crack in the mic. Like there was like a crackle in the speakers to then Joanne being right dead center in front of you, and then it happening again and her going here. And we literally built a business called The Arena, built around how to teach leadership and communication. And that is like a masterclass on how to handle distractions, but then how to engage. Because if you had been too locked in, which I've seen you, and that stage is much higher than head tall. So she's under the stage, kind of like, sticking her arm up. It's crazy to me that you saw her. It's crazy to me that you acknowledged, that you were able to see her and then acknowledge and then not ruin your talk. Your talk got better. It was like an infusion of this like weird moment that made you more human and less of this like closer speaker and more of just like, okay, this guy is now, how does he deal with this?
Yeah.
And you're always put in these interesting moments. Like, do you think these things work in your favor or work against you?
I think that's up to you and the way you react and respond to it.
As a communicator?
Yeah, because right before the sound breaks, I literally say something like, something magical is happening. I'm making a sound and it's traveling across invisible waves, piercing into your brain, causing an electrical response, which ignites images in your imagination, which seeps into your soul and could potentially change your life. And then those sound waves break.
Yeah.
And the sounds are no longer able to transmit. It's almost as if
it was like
a
you
learning
made it up
object.
It was really interesting.
Yeah.
And then the rest of your talk, I think, was you opened it with, I get those 3 minutes back.
Yeah, because I remember I heard this first pop, and I think I saw 332 on the screen. And then I went another second, and then there was another pop. And then I said, hey, did you guys hear that? Was that in my head? You know?
Yeah. And then the room, you know.
Yeah, I started laughing, and the laughter gave her an opportunity to come.
Yes.
And
so I wanted into that moment.
Yeah, so step in that moment. So I wanted to create some kind of oxygen in that moment rather than people just being worried about the microphone going bad. Mm-hmm. And then when she handed me the mic, the last thing she had said to me before I walked on the stage, because I said, I'm the last speaker, so I guess I can go as long as I want.
Yeah.
And she said, if you do that, I'll be fired and you'll be fired. So that's the last thing I remembered.
And she was sweet.
She was darling, you know. And so that's the last thing I remembered, though. So when she handed me the microphone, the first thing I said is, this is fine, but I want my 3 minutes back.
You did. And I knew that there was something that you obviously were referring to, something I didn't know about. So
this was me and her. This is our conversation.
But it was so cool because I think it was a really well-received talk. I think people were really interested, especially in a leadership context, for us to be focusing on communication and frequencies. Mm-hmm. I think was really genuinely something that lived within its own kind of ecosystem, but also played really well into the theme of the conference. That's on business and leadership, because communication is the quintessential core value and maybe the lifeblood of an organization. Without communication, you cannot move forward. Without communication, you cannot grow, you cannot interact, you cannot refine, you cannot build. And so what better than to speak at a business conference than communication? And even going deeper, like understanding the DNA and the frequency of the communication. Did you feel that the room was with you?
Oh, absolutely. I did. Even with the whole microphone thing going bad, what really comes to my mind, you know, and because I think in sports so many times, is Tom Brady. And good quarterbacks can throw great in perfect conditions. Right. Great quarterbacks throw great in terrible conditions. And so here I'm standing there as an expert in communication. And so if I can't even handle that, am I really an expert? A communicator. Like I can know communication and not be a great communicator, just like I can teach on happiness and not be happy. Right. But I'm standing in that moment, and a part of my credibility is that I have spoken to millions of people around the world, and I've taken this unique thing called communication and turned it into an art form. And for me, it's both an art and a science. It's both utilitarian in terms of essential to accomplish what you need, but it's also poetic. It's also romantic and beautiful. And that combination makes it transforming. And so I just feel like I had an opportunity to elevate my game and show my stuff, be me. Yeah, it's really cool. I love that. I also feel like, you know, the people at GLS are actually, it's a great new culture. And the episode we filmed earlier that we're going to release after this is actually on culture. And I think one of the unique things with their space is they went through something really rough. Yeah. You know, they had a leader that kind of had some life stuff, and it was very public because he was very famous in that world, especially. But it was in like the Chicago Sun. I think it's the Chicago Sun. Yeah. And just, you know, very public. Or the Tributes.
The Tribune. Chicago Tribune. And so, you know, being able for them to bounce back, because it felt like people were fresh, people felt happy, people were alive, people were engaged. It was completely sold out.
Yeah.
There was more engagement internationally than there has been in so long for this conference. And it was really cool to be a part of, one of the conferences that was really hard for them, and then being a part of a conference that was really, I think, smooth and great for them. I think it was a big win. From the outside looking in, it felt amazing.
Yeah, it was sold out, overflow.
Yeah, and just but like the room felt light.
Yeah,
people were happy.
They were leaning toward the future.
People were inviting their friends and their businesses, and it was really, really special. So, I think there might not be an arena conference without a GLS, because they've been doing it for so long in the Midwest. And I feel like we have to create what the future of that will look like for us in LA. And so, if you want to come to the arena conference, thearenasummit.com, there's tickets up there, and we have some phenomenal speakers. You'll be speaking as well.
I do think that the arena conference is kind of, if the Global Leadership Summit and Ted had a baby.
Yeah.
That would be us. And I think one difference is that GLS is built strongly on the professor frequency, on institutional and organizational success in a subject. And I think the arena is built more on the Maven, the Seer, and the Challenger frequency. And, we're looking for people who see the world a little bit differently. We're looking for people who are going to cast a vision of a world we could create. And we're looking for people who will set us on fire if we're too apathetic to make a difference in the world.
Yeah. And I think GLS has a reputation.
Yeah.
Right? 30 years.
Yeah.
We don't have a reputation. We have one great conference under our belt.
That's right.
So we have a good reputation, but we're able to just do some unique things that I think you can't do when you've been doing it for 30 years. Yeah,
and their target, I think, is very strongly like the CEO. It has a strong corporate feel. If you ran a Fortune 500 company, you'd feel very comfortable taking your executive team and your staff there. I think the arena is if you're running a rogue agency with 20 employees and you're trying to change the world, the arena is the spot for you. If you're trying to
no. Well, yes is yes, and.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not for the other. I'm just saying it's a little bit more of a wildcat kind of experience.
We're definitely the Wild West a little bit more, and it's a little more. I'd say it's highly planned, it's highly laid out. But it's definitely more focused towards the new entrepreneur, the podcaster, the content creator, the young businessman, businesswoman. But we had some billionaires, we had some crazy big companies and representatives in the room. So that's really unique. I'm really excited. But with that said, I think Global Leadership Summit was A+. I genuinely think 10 out of 10, they killed it. They were amazing.
Yep.
Good. There's only a few things I didn't love, but that's my opinion. I thought they handled everything great, and great teams, great people, and just really kind. That's the thing I left being I never felt stressed out here. I never felt alienated or I wasn't, it just was it was a good conference. Low ego. It was a low ego conference.
Yeah. I really, really appreciated that.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I would go hear Craig Rochelle and Will Guidara anytime, any place, as often as I could.
Yes. Craig Rochelle is just so different than us. And it's why I think I'm so attracted to him as a person. Because we obviously have commonalities in our faith and belief and family. But he just thinks so unique to us. And I think it's so, so, so impactful. You've also been a friend of his for 20 years.
Oh my goodness.
15 plus years.
At least 20 years, at least.
Right? His first book you bought 1,000 copies.
Yeah, when he was not Craig Rochelle, before he was known, he wrote a book called Chazon, and I got 1,000 copies of that book, even though I didn't know this kid. Yeah. And I gave it to 1,000 of the most influential leaders in the United States that I knew.
But what was it about that book that was so impactful? Because it was Craig's first book, right?
It was.
Yeah.
I picked two people, Craig Rochelle and Donald Miller, and I just said, I don't know who these guys are, but I think they're going to make a difference. Yeah. And I want to be a part of that. So I bought 1,000 copies of Chazon and 1,000 copies of Blue Like Jazz, and I gave them to my network across the world, and said, "These are the guys you need to pay attention to."
I remember because I remember helping unbox them. I think it was in high school or something, and I remember being like, "Chazon, this sounds like a calzone. This sounds like." I just was so confused. But then I became a fan and a friend of Craig's. So now it's cool to see it as like an adult going, "Oh wow, you really did pick that guy."
Yeah.
And then like Donald Miller, like he's someone who's so impactful to organization and even in the arena, like his wisdom is always kind of coming through in his books and his podcasts and the business that he has, which is an amazing business on storytelling. But he's someone that I remember as a young kid being like, "Oh, Dad, he's like another one that's like different than everyone else, kind of just like you, you know?"
Yeah. Yeah. What's interesting to me is like both of them are so unique, and they're nothing like me, but they're different and unique, which makes them in a sense like each other.
And like you.
Yeah, and like me.
Yes, because they're different than what's normal.
Yeah.
Not necessarily different like you. And that makes it unique. And I love that. And so, I thought GLS was great. Like it made me want to come back. You know, I was like, oh, this is a great place to learn, great place to lean in, and with really healthy conversations. So anyways, that's our recap of GLS.
We want to do a little recap of GLS and let you guys know what our experience was like, and also just to take away some learning moments and to take some moments of reflection. I have to say, my most significant moment was when Coach K started talking about his 3 A's that were actually 4 A's, but he's Coach K, so he can turn 3 into 4. It's like turning water into wine. Yeah. And I think number 3 was accountability, which is the one that I felt like I was living in right now, because, part of our challenge even in Mexico City is, you have to have standards that you live by. Yeah. And standards really undergird your culture. And that's where accountability lies. And I just felt such a strong conviction of that. I felt like it was a reinforcement in my own life of, okay, I'm making good choices and making good decisions. But the one that shocked me, that just blew me away, was the one right before that, because he said adaptability is one of the key characteristics of his sustainable, his sustainability as a coach. He has had sustained greatness for 50 years. And he said adaptability. And then he was very specific. He said adaptable communication. Isn't that the phrase he used? I think it was, he said it was, you must become an adaptable communicator. Okay. And when you have the ability to have adaptability in your communication, you can keep developing and growing as a leader. Because he said the one difference in his work was that he kept getting older, but his team stayed the same age. Yeah. Because his students were 18 to 22. Yeah. When he started in his 30s and his 40s and his 50s and his 60s. And how did he get to keep in his 70s? How could he keep coaching such young men? Because he learned communication adaptability. He talked about agility and adapting to their communication style and to their culture. And he said the humor is a key, quintessential key to that part. Yeah. I'm sitting there going, he spoke before me. He was like, to me, he was John the Baptist to my message. Yeah. When he got up there and said, you need to learn how to become an adaptable communicator. And I'm going to teach you how to access the 7 frequencies of communication. I'm going to help you figure out where you start, but I'm going to help you learn how to expand. And I think the 7 frequencies is basically the practical application of what Coach K was saying you needed to have sustained greatness. Yes. Didn't he talk about, there's a couple of things that I wrote down that I really loved under accountability, but didn't he talk about being obsessed? No, that was Craig. Oh, that was Craig. He said, I'll give you permission to be obsessed. I loved that. I thought that talk was so amazing. But the thing from Coach K that I really, really loved, and this note, he talked about, I love this stuff and I love people who love this stuff. Yeah. And I thought that it was connected kind of to what Craig said about just being obsessed, to being interested. Like he loves people who are interested and he loves when they're interested because he's interested. Yeah. And I thought his quote on accountability and just that line about accountability is not alive and well. And he talks about people are afraid to tell each other the truth. And a core value that he has is that we can help, but only if you take accountability. Yeah. If you make a mistake, we can help you, but you have to own the mistake. Yeah. And by the way, there's just so much cultural conversations about narcissism. And one of the key ways of identifying if a person you're working with has a narcissistic personality structure is they refuse accountability. And they're fragile when you speak into their life. Coach K had a system that weeded out narcissists without even saying it out loud. Like, you can either focus on the negative thing or you can focus on the positive culture, and it weeds out the negative thing.
Yeah.
And that's, as I was listening to different speakers and listening to the ones who were really good at leadership, because I would say Craig Rochelle and Coach K and Will Guidara are people who've actually led in really significant spaces that I admire.
Right. That we're really interested in. Yeah.
And what you find is you have people who focus on creating a culture, and that weeds out the people who don't fit the culture. A lot of times what we focus on is talent, and then we try to make those people fit the culture. And that's where we find ourselves making mistakes all the time. You need people who actually fit the culture and then let the talent emerge.
He talked a lot about the difference between like creating rules and creating standards.
Yes.
And that you never own a rule book. You either obey it or you don't.
Yeah.
But you own standards.
That's right.
So when he talked about like coaching the Olympic team with like Kobe and LeBron and it was like Carmelo Anthony and all of these like
Dwayne Wade and
these phenomenal you know, personalities and talents. He talked a lot about leaving your ego at the door. But I thought the first story where he talks about, you know, hey, we're having a team meeting. We have a team meeting, and they're like, okay, to talk about what? You know, what do you think we're going to talk about? He goes, oh, about offense and defense. And he goes, no, we're going to talk about our standards. Yeah. And he walked through like integrity, respect, courage, selfless service, duty, and trust. And I thought that was such like an amazing concoction of how to build, you know, the epicness and the cohesiveness in culture was to really own standards together and to do your job and to own your space and to keep your side of the street clean, maybe in those spaces. But anyways, I just wanted to recap and talk about looking back at GLS. Is there anything you wish you had said that you didn't say? Is there?
No, I mean, I just loved that we got to be a part of that experience. I'm really grateful for it. You know, I'm a little apprehensive about hearing my talk. And
why? We got the link yesterday.
Yeah, I know. I'm a little nervous about that because I think the moment was special. It may have been more special than the message.
No,
you know?
I don't agree.
No. Well, you know, hopefully the message will keep impacting the world.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things I do want to talk about, but I don't want to talk about it on here because it's a little more nuanced. But like one of the things, like Will's talk on Unreasonable Hospitality, it was a lot of stories in the book.
Yes.
And so I came to you afterwards being like, I have the privilege of having met Will and having spent a few hours with Will. So like, this is coming from an entitled perspective. I've also read the book a couple of times. I love the book. I've also listened to a ton of his interviews to prep for our interview. Right. I was more prepared for a Will conversation than I've ever been for anything, and I didn't use a single one of the notes. But you know, and I was like, I really wish he had told more stories that weren't in the book.
It's just like when I heard James Clear last year there.
Yes.
And it was exactly everything in the book, which I'd read. And I felt a little bit ripped off.
Yeah, but I've also felt that about you in the past. We're like, you know.
Okay, now let's get personal.
No,
No, it's all right. I'm just kidding.
How do you differentiate? Because I know like when you start with like A Way of the Warrior or like A Last Arrow or The Barbarian Way, you start with all the content that's in the book first. And then when you're speaking out, for the first like few months, it's really close to the book. And then as like the lifespan of the book goes on, you tend to add more stories, to update the interactions, to like bring new research to it.
Well, I would push back and say when I did Way of the Warrior, and then I did like a 6-week series at Mosaic.
Yeah.
Every talk was something that was not in the book.
Okay.
So I actually try to make sure that when I'm doing a talk, it's like the expanded edition of the book. So I may begin with a story that's in the book to create point of reference. Yeah. Because it's the argument of the book. And then I do things that you cannot find in the book.
Yeah. And so I'm like, I think what I've settled on that is that like if you're a Will or you or even like a Craig, because Craig wasn't talking about a book necessarily, but you kind of have to talk about the thing you're brought in to talk about.
Yeah.
If he had come in, unreasonable hospitality, but was, speaking on why leaders eat last, Simon Sinek's book, it wouldn't, even though they're best friends, it wouldn't make as much sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And by the way, people will come to me and say, we want you to talk about your book. We want you to talk about this. And I go, oh, let me do something different. I don't want people to be bored. And they'll go, no one will be bored. Everyone wants to hear you talk about this live.
Yeah.
So sometimes when you're the person who creates the content, you're bored.
Yeah.
But the audience isn't, because they wanted to hear you talk about that live.
So what we've come to the conclusion, I'm just selfish.
It's like a Taylor Swift concert.
Taylor Swift?
Yeah, like Taylor Swift. Sorry, saying her name right. You don't go to a Taylor Swift concert to hear things that she's never sung before. You go to hear all the songs you know every word, and you're singing all the words with her. So I think we're wrong.
So it's a double standard. We need to hold Will to the same standard that we're holding Taylor.
Yeah.
And hold you to the same standard we're holding Taylor.
Yeah.
No, because
people come for the classics. They come for the hits.
They come for the hits. and I think the conference like that, and that may be the differentiator between the arena and GLS.
Yeah.
Is that in the arena, I really want people to give the thing that was unexpected.
Yeah.
What's
new? What are you working on? What are you thinking about? What are you not sure of?
Because we were also talking about our friend Phil Jones, who he really is about never writing another book again. He has his book.
Yeah.
Is it Know What to Say?
Yeah.
Exactly What to Say. Mm-hmm. I don't know exactly what to say. It's exactly what to say. As Austin just fed me the line. And I asked him in the interview, and I actually asked you after, I was like, I don't think Phil likes me, because I kept pressing him, being like, I didn't feel like I was pressing him. I said, hey, well, what's your next book? And he goes, why do I need to write a next book? Mm-hmm. Perfectly valid response. Mm-hmm. My sensitive self was like, oh, he hates me now. I'm just going to walk out of this room.
No, but that's a part of curating the arena and spaces like that. Because I brought Phil Jones, I brought Todd Herman, I brought people, and I knew their message.
Yes.
It's about, one's about alter egos, one's about exactly what to say. But I knew their message would be new for our audience.
Yeah.
And so it's the same message for them, but it's an entirely new audience in an entirely new context.
Yes. And my point with Phil Jones, and I think Todd as well, is that they had a lot of stories that weren't in the book. Phil has a whole environment ecosystem that he builds around that book.
He keeps adding and adding.
You don't get it just from reading that book. You get it from paying attention to Phil.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm that's where I'm always, and I know Will does too, because he has podcasts, but I'm as a consumer, I really with the arena, and maybe this as a curator now, going, I really want the thing that's not in the book. Tell me the story that didn't make it.
Yeah, but we'll put the thing that's not in the book at the end of the book. No, at the end of the audiobook.
Oh, I haven't listened to the audiobook.
See, I listened to the audiobook.
He did delete
and
it.
Then he said, hey, if you're still with me, I'm going to add things that got edited out of the book. And I'm like, boom, I got the special stuff.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so with that said, I love all these speakers, all these communicators, but we need to go, and there's a thing that you talked about. You broke down the 7 frequencies. You talked about, motivator, challenger, commander, healer, professor, Maven, and Seer. And during the Seer, you really got emotional, and you talked about the guy who used to run GLS. And you were referring to him, but you didn't say his name. And I thought that was a very interesting nuance. And I asked you afterwards, why did you refer to the man who had the vision to start a conference like this, but was a little bit alienated by his own maybe actions or whatever? That's a complicated situation, not for us to decide on. But you did kind of show some kind of honor and respect to what had come before. Why was that important?
It's because Bill Hybels founded Willow Creek Community Church. And he was the principal entrepreneur, catalyst, visionary, and grew that church to one of the largest churches in the Western Hemisphere. And then out of that started the Global Leadership Summit. He had a vision to impact business people and companies around the world through faith and excellence. He was very, very close to Jack Welch and the former CEO of GE, and invested his life in him, helping him come to faith, and other high-level CEOs. And then, through different actions or choices he made, created some controversy, and it was enough that it actually brought his work to a close, where he was removed from Willow Creek and removed from the Global Leadership Summit. And when I got to the Seer frequency, I'm in this massive, beautiful structure on this property with a lake that wouldn't exist if he had not been born. And I just felt it would be the most disingenuous thing to talk about Seers and not talk about the impact Bill Hybels had on everyone there. I did not say his name because I knew I didn't want to disrespect the people who were there. And I also didn't want it to be edited out. But I said, I told the story in such a way where everyone knew. And sometimes the most powerful thing is not to say the name, but to have that name emerge in everyone's soul because they know who it is. And you could feel an audible gasp and applause in the room. And I had someone, Henry Cloud, a friend of mine, who wrote the book Boundaries, come to me tearfully and say,
in backstage, we had you on camera too, and he whispered in your ear.
He whispered in my ear. He said, there are no words to describe the extraordinary nature of that talk. And then he said, but what you did for Bill Hybels was such a gift, not just to him, but to everyone here who never got to say thank you to him. And there's something wrong in Christianity where we just throw people out and then we want to act like they never existed. And, hey, I'm okay if you go, he shouldn't be the pastor or whatever, but don't act like his 30 years of life didn't have a tremendous impact on people's lives for good. It seems like we have a culture that is one of the most unforgiving cultures, in the world. And our standards for leadership should be high. But our standards of humanity should probably be measured the way Jesus measured things in telling us whoever's without sin cast the first stone. So I wasn't planning to do it. I just felt compelled in my own spirit that I can't talk about the Seer frequency and not mention the fact that everything that exists in this space was because someone had that frequency and others were drawn together to do something amazing. You can have a great frequency and be an imperfect human being.
I thought that was a very tasteful way of doing it, because I felt like if we had just come for the first time, it wouldn't have been appropriate, but because we've been deeply connected for 20 years.
And they know me and trust me, and I've earned, in a sense, the right to say that.
And we know their team first name basis. They're wonderful people. They're our friends and our
And I had
colleagues.
no agenda.
Yeah, and I don't think it was dishonoring. I actually think it was really honoring to a memory, to a past, to a former leader, but also was it dishonoring to the new CEO, who seems amazing, and the new team and the new direction.
And the new pastor of the church as well.
So I felt like there was a lot of really good happening, but it was a really delicate nuance, and I want people to watch that talk. We're going to break it down in the arena, the mic flub and how you handle distraction and how you handled that, because that would have destroyed my life. And then, and many others, but then how you handled the nuance of honoring the past, but without even having to mention it. Because I don't think I think they're pretty honest with us. They would tell us if that offended them or bothered them or felt like that was disrespectful. But I felt like that was actually really a nice touch. To go, standing inside of a vision of someone. And we're living and sitting in chairs that were made by imperfect people, talking about mics. But we don't think about the thing that's innocuous. We don't think about how rough Steve Jobs was, but he's idolized and remembered as this prolific figure. But he was, you watch the movies, read the books. He was a tough guy. We're very pick and choosy with the standard we hold over certain people.
We don't stop using Amazon because of Jeff Bezos. We don't stop buying Teslas because of Elon Musk. We don't.
And his 12 children.
And we don't stop believing in the future dream of an America that is color blind or color beautiful because MLK Jr. had contradictions in his life. And the reality is, even the best of humanity's future is built by imperfect people, flawed, fragile, and yet somehow beautifully human.
Okay, this was a great episode. We're going to cut this one short. Thank you guys for listening to the Mindshift podcast. Really appreciate you guys. Rate and review this episode, this podcast. Follow, subscribe, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Let us know where you're listening to. Also, check out the Instagram. Also, go to erwinmcmanus.com, 7frequencies.com. Buy the book, buy the assessment. Find out which frequency you communicate in and read that book. It will be amazing. You will enjoy it. You also will love to buy it for a friend and get engaged in that conversation. So we will see you guys next week. Have a great week.
Have a great week.
Bye.